Good afternoon, everyone. If you would take your seats, we're about to begin. My name is Susan Nannis. I'm one of the rabbis at Wilshire Boulevard Temple. I am the director of adult programs, and it is my pleasure to welcome you this afternoon to Defending Artistic Expression. We have an amazing group of panelists to share their ideas with you. But before we begin, I would like to ask you to rise. And I'm going to invite Alan Parsons to come forward and lead us in the Star-Spangled Banner. We face the American flag for this. Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars Thank you so much, Alan. I'd now like, remain standing, please. I'd like to invite the bassist of the Alan Parsons Project, an Israeli, Guy Erez, to lead us in Hatikvah. And we face the Israeli flag. Olod balevav Nefesh Yehudi Homiyah Ufatem Mizrach Kadima Ayil Etzion Sophia Od Moav Tikvatenu Thank you so much. You may be seated. As you know, this program is sponsored by Wilshire Boulevard Temple, Israel Bonds, and Liberate Art, and we will be the cultural boycott of Israel. But first, we are honored and privileged to have the Consul General of Israel here with us this afternoon. Please welcome Sam Grundberg, Consul General of Israel.
Thank you so much. Tzoraim Tovim, good afternoon. First of all, I want to assert my artistic expression by not singing for you this afternoon. I'll do you all that favor. And it was very moving to hear anthems sung so beautifully. I want to express how very pleased I am to be with you today for this very important discussion. And I first of all commend all of you for being here, especially since Game 5 of the World Series is being played today. So you all deserve a lot of extra credit for being here. I want to thank Lana Melman and Liberate Art for everything that you do to counter the attempts at a cultural boycott of Israel. This is a very important topic, and it's going to be a very meaningful and interesting discussion. I want to thank Wilshire Boulevard Temple and Israel Bonds for your support for today's event. I'd like also to recognize our panelists, all the influential voices in the entertainment industry who enrich our lives by bringing art and music to the public, and all of you understand the importance of supporting Israeli art and culture. You know, it's very important to, when we have this discussion about the attempts to boycott Israel, and understand exactly what it is. I think at this point it's fairly agreed upon that it's not really an economic issue. The economic impact is not significant, but it's really a moral issue. And the moral voice is very important. And it's important also to understand what it is. And I don't use these accusations lightly, but in some cases, not in all cases, in some cases we have to call it what it is, because a lot of times when the state of Israel is singled out and held to a higher standard, and others are not, there's a word for that, and a lot of times it's anti-Semitism. That's not always the case, and criticism is legitimate. But a lot of times when these issues come up, I ask myself, well, if there's an organization or a group or an effort to try and boycott Israel, so I imagine that first question I ask is, well, where are we on that list of how many other countries are they boycotting? Iran, you know, for human rights and all kinds of different claims. China, many other countries, North Korea. And if the answer is that it's only one country, then in my book, that's anti-Semitism. If it were somewhere on the list of many countries, then as an Israeli diplomat, I feel I have to do my job better of explaining, of educating. So it's important to understand, first of all, what it is. You know, obviously the cultural boycott of Israel can only succeed when artists decide that they'll not do business in Israel and not travel to perform in Israel. Today we'll hear from leaders in the industry who can speak firsthand about why artists should come to Israel and what type of pressure Hollywood artists are facing when they're asked to boycott Israel. We will hear today from these panelists about the power of music, the power of art, and its incredible universal language. And we have the opportunity to applaud them for their work in safeguarding the fundamental elements of artistic expression and their continued support of the State of Israel. And despite the efforts of boycott, I want to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, that we can join together in celebrating the fact that it's an incredible year when it comes to entertainment in general. Just to mention a couple things, Conan O'Brien recently had a visit to Israel. I hope a lot of you were able to follow that. And it became a global viral sensation. And when you look at the music and the concert season that Israel had this past summer, Israel experienced one of its busiest concert seasons ever, with some of the music industry's biggest names taking center stage. Aerosmith launched a world tour, just to name a few. Justin Bieber performed in front of more than 50,000. Rod Stewart, Britney Spears, Tears for Fears, Guns N' Roses, Radiohead, and the list goes on and on. And the work of organizations like Liberate Art and all of you who continue to support the arts in the state of Israel help contribute towards that success. Israel's really gained international recognition for our film, music, theater, demonstrating to communities around the world that we're at the forefront of the arts. The same way that we're considered at the forefront of technology with our startup nation approach to being innovative has also overflown into this area of arts. And as an open and tolerant democracy, we're also proud of our strong, vibrant, and multicultural society that's built upon the foundation of creativity and ingenuity. I want to mention that the role that Israel Bonds plays here and why this partnership is such a natural one. Israel Bonds been there for the state of Israel every step of the way. It's always been an inseparable part of Israel's story, and the impact of Israel Bonds has been interwoven throughout the history of the country. And today we also recognize the role that this organization plays as an indispensable and vital asset of the Jewish state. Bonds investments have gone towards building, nurturing, and developing every sector in Israel, propelling the small country into a global economic engine. So supporting Israel through purchasing bonds and investing in bonds as a lifetime investment in the state of Israel is a perfect way to speak out against the cultural boycott. And I encourage all of you to continue to educate yourselves and encourage those around you to support the Israeli arts and culture and to invest in a flourishing state of Israel. Enjoy the panel discussion. Toda rabah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. At the end of our program, we are inviting you to a dessert reception and an opportunity to purchase Israel bonds, which we hope you will take advantage of. I would now like to invite Lana Melman, CEO of Liberate Art, to introduce our program. Please welcome Lana.
Well, hi everyone. I want to welcome everyone here today. Whoops, looks like someone. Perfect, thank you. Anyway, my name is Lana Melman. I'm the CEO of Liberate Art, and I act as an expert countering the cultural boycott against Israel, and I also work as a liaison between the entertainment industry and Israel. So I'd like to welcome you here today. Hold on one second, I'm seeming to have problems with the PowerPoint. Oh goodness, okay, let's see. No, this one. Oh, perfect. See? Okay, thank you. Hold on. No? All right, you know what? I'm just going to do that like this. Okay, so that was the introduction. That's a photo that was supposed to be under the introduction. Okay, so today we're here to talk about the boycott, sanctions, and divestment, also known as BDS. Now, as you all probably know, BDS comes in many different facets. There's the academic, economic, sports, and the cultural boycott. So today we're going to focus specifically on the cultural boycott, which impacts the entertainment field. All right, so what makes this particular aspect of the campaign so important and so powerful? And that is that it impacts not just the global impression of Israel, but it also impacts freedom of artistic expression for everyone. So what is the goal of BDS? The goal for every facet of BDS is exactly the same. It's to delegitimize Israel. So what do you need to do to delegitimize an entire nation? What you need to do is to associate them with ideas and concepts that are so heinous that the rest of the world feels righteous about isolating them. So here we have examples, and you're looking at these artists' images. These artists are all have gone to Israel, and Scarlett Johansson's case, she was a spokesperson for SodaStream, which is an Israeli company. Taylor Swift had not even actually booked a concert tour. They were simply rumors for a concert. So what does this campaign do? It hijacks the name and likeness of celebrities in order to get basically free publicity for their misinformation. It helps them spread misinformations and lies, associating Israel with destruction and apartheid. So the campaign has many different aspects to it. There's a social media campaign, which is on every single platform. That's where you get a lot of the very graphic, very slanderous images are being spread. Then, of course, there are petitions that circulate. They get started online. You often see thousands of signatures underscoring a statement, making false allegations against Israel, and then urging a particular artist who had scheduled a concert date or maybe to attend a film festival, urging them to cancel. Open letters to their representatives, emails to their representatives, phone calls to their representatives. And then, of course, there's articles and blogs. And what will happen is that these campaigns, the actual statements, petitions themselves, become news so that mainstream publications pick them up. And then, of course, there are protests. And we will see one of the techniques that they do is they like to follow, particularly a musician that has a tour schedule throughout Europe first. They stage protests at each and every one of their stops, urging them to cancel Israel from their schedule. So what does this impact? Well, first of all, it's very clear that what they're trying to do is target the artist's personal reputation. When they make these associations, the logic goes like this. Israel, a false claim, of course, is an apartheid, human rights violating nation. And if you go to Israel, that means that you support apartheid and human rights violations. So this is a real slander against a human being. Then, of course, there's the implicit threat and actually explicit threat to their careers. So, if you support apartheid, then this is going to damage your reputation and potentially your career. And some of the messaging becomes so vitriolic that there have been performers who have canceled because they were concerned about their safety. So how does this work? It works because celebrities make news. People are interested in stories about artists. And so that gives a tremendous amount of traction. It's like free advertising on a billboard. Then there's the other aspect, and that is the social media reach of artists and celebrities. If you take the top 12 celebrities on Facebook, they have combined number of friends coming close to 1 billion people. So that is 12 celebrities, artists, human beings on one platform. The ability to reach hundreds of millions of people is very, very real. And by the way, they don't have to support the boycott. In fact, one of the things we'll talk about is that artists do not support the boycott. what they do is that they use their social media to post negative messages, negative images, and thereby reaching their fans. So you might say in some cases, well, okay, you know, an artist is entitled to their own opinion. Maybe, you know, their opinion holds more or less weight with other people. In, you know, my opinion, I feel very strongly that, in fact, artists do influence the thought, certainly of a certain group of people. But if you look at the demographics, the people that are most affected by the images that they see, the negative images they see about Israel on social media, are young people, because that's predominantly how they get their news. One of the things that often gets kind of sidelined is that it's not just international artists that are facing pressure to boycott. It's international venues who are being pressured to rescind their invitations to Israeli artists. Israeli artists face tremendous discrimination. So what else is at stake? First of all, the other thing we have to consider that often gets kind of pushed to the wayside in the midst of heated political discussion is the impact on freedom of artistic expression. What the BDS is doing is simply no different than book burning or the Committee on Un-American Activities in the 50s. They're trying to control what people see and hear. It's a way of controlling thought. They're trying to separate artist from audience, and that's dangerous for us all. Okay, so who are the victims here? The victims are international artists, Israeli artists, and audiences everywhere. All right, so in summary here, a few words. What the cultural boycott campaign against Israel is. It is not a peace movement. It is a political movement. It's not an attempt at reconciliation. In fact, it stirs conflict. It does not promote cultural exchange. It, in fact, is a means of censorship and thought control. It is not an artist or Palestinian movement or campaign. In fact, it is a Western campaign, an EU and UK origin. Those are really the voices supporting the cultural boycott campaign. And it is certainly not pro-Palestinian. It is anti-Israel. Okay. So now I'd like to invite our guests. And, okay. I'm so sorry this isn't working. And I want to do a nice job with this. Yes. Thank you. Okay. That's good. Oh, I will take that, actually. Thank you. All right. So now I'd like to bring up a really wonderful panel. And they represent all facets of the entertainment industry. So first, I'd like to introduce filmmaker David Zucker, who has been making us laugh for the last 40 years, co-writing and producing such iconic movies as Airplane and the Naked Gun series, and directing scary movies 3 and 4. Today, he's going to help us think. So please welcome David Zucker. Next, Mark Pellegrino is a
I'd like to make a short speech, though, first. I'm just
Okay, Mark Pellegrino is a television and film star who has appeared in such smash series as Lost, Dexter, and Supernatural. He is also an outspoken champion for Israel and personal liberty. Mark, please welcome Mark. Okay, Ken Hertz is a prominent entertainment attorney here in Los Angeles. His firm represents a cross-section of the entertainment industry, including film stars such as Will and Jada Smith, and musicians Gwen Stefani and Keith Richards. Entertainment attorneys do more than negotiate deals for their clients. They serve as confidants and advisors. Welcome, Ken. Next, Guy Eretz is a Los Angeles-based songwriter and producer, composer, and a gifted bass player. Born and raised in Israel, Eretz moved to Los Angeles in 1992 or 82? Oh, hold on. 92, okay. Guy plays for the Alan Parsons Project, but has also worked with many other notable artists, including Ziggy Marley, Miley Cyrus, and Florence and the Machine. Welcome, Guy. Okay, next, Alan Parsons. Alan is the frontman for his band, the Alan Parsons Project, as well as a sought-after record producer who has earned 11 Grammy nominations. Earlier in his career, he worked as a sound engineer on such legendary albums as the Beatles' Abbey Road and Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Welcome, Alan. And a great job leading the Star Spangled Banner. Thank you. Is this working? Good. All right, I'd like to begin the discussion with you, Alan, and also the elephant in the room, Roger Waters. In 2015, Roger sent you a note asking you to cancel your upcoming tour in Israel. And you responded, and I'd like you to share that story with us.
He did contact me for the first time in many years. We hadn't worked together since essentially 1973. He represented himself as part of this anti-Israel movement and made a request to me to cancel my concerts in Israel, which I was just about to do. I think this was 4 years ago, maybe. Almost 3 years ago. Yeah, and that would have actually been the second visit we would have done. I wrote back to he kind of wrote to me kind of privately to start with, and then I responded to him privately. Then he made his appeal to me more public through Facebook. And I specifically asked him not to publish my reaction to his request, and he ignored that request. And, it all became very public, and it just became a big sort of publicity issue, which was very distasteful. And I made it very clear that I was not interested in his views on cultural enterprises within Israel, and I made it very clear. No, I'm going to go. I like Israel. I like Israeli people. I have nothing against anything to do with Israel or any Jewish people or anything else. I mean, I've grown up my whole life working with Jewish and Israeli people. So, as demonstrated here, I mean, guys in my band, for heaven's sake. So. No, but it was a very unpleasant and awkward situation with Roger Waters, and needless to say, we've kind of fallen out since, I can say.
Well, thank you. I mean, and I must say that you were one of the first who really was outspoken about the way Roger works, and that basically what his tactics were. So thank you for that. Mark, in a recent video, you said that the cultural boycott campaign against Israel is bigotry. So why isn't it just a legitimate form of political action? What makes it bigotry?
Well, for me, as an advocate of liberty, you're rejecting the culture of liberty when you're requesting that artists boycott Israel, and associating. So for me, just on that level, in of itself, rejecting one of our most noble principles of Western civilization is awful. But the bigotry is associating individual artists, I think, with the country of their birth, their nationality. Broad brush painting a person based on that association, I think, is sort of the very definition of bigotry. Yeah, and of course, Israel has a very diverse population, and as much as I agree with their basic politics, I could say that not every Israeli agrees with the politics of Israel, and that's part of the great liberal democratic institutions that they have there as their political structure that allows that kind of diversity, and should, I think, inform people that are in thinking that just a simple accident of being somewhere somehow associates you with their politics. That should inform them that that's wrong, collectivist bigotry.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And the population is just as diverse politically in Israel as it is in the United States and around other free liberal countries today. So, David Zucker, you just returned from Israel. One of the reoccurring false claims against Israel is that it's an apartheid state. You were there, you walked the beaches, you saw the cafes. Can you give us our take on that?
Well, it was wonderful. I mean, Israel is, it's a free country, and as long as the Arabs were separated by a barbed wire, I was fine. Is anyone? Okay. But I'm going to get in trouble here. But, it's just, of course, there's so many, it has such a diverse population, and there's all kinds of people there. And everybody, Dennis Prager did a great video in Prager University explaining why Israel is just not an apartheid state. That's just a screed. It has nothing to do with South Africa and all that stuff. And the Arabs in Israel, I'm told, live better than in any of the countries, and they have more freedom, as do gays and just about everybody else. And I saw, it was just, I had a wonderful time. I was there to raise money, in fact, for, there's this wonderful organization there, which is called One Family, and they raise money for victims of terror. And so I showed a couple of movies and did some Q&As, and but it was really a fun time.
Right. Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
okay.
It does. It does.
Because I'm trying to dodge it.
Mark, if it's so obvious when you go to Israel that it's an integrated society, why do you think the BDS campaign continues to harp on that one particular slogan?
Well, because it gets people feeling instead of thinking, and that's sort of what those movements are all about. So that associating you with something despicable sort of makes you have a visual reaction, right?
Often enough. A few years ago, I worked on a campaign on college campuses, and I'll shut up after this. I worked on a campaign on college campuses to try and help Jewish kids respond to a very well-organized pro-Palestinian campaign on college campuses, right? And most of the Jewish kids were not receptive to messaging that we tried to implement in this program because they just wanted to be left alone so they could get through college, get their degree, and get a job. And unfortunately, not enough effort. You know, Jews invented PR, and yet Israel has terrible PR, right? And I just don't think that we do a very good job of communicating and messaging a narrative. Just rejecting this tactic, you know, which is a peaceful tactic, by the way. Just rejecting this tactic is not the way to deal with this.
Perhaps because it requires a narrative, and sound bites are easier and more impactful emotionally, right?
Absolutely.
Hope and change is a lot more impactful on people than discussing really what types of policies you have to implement to preserve liberty and what's good for a society. All these things are abstractions that are much more difficult to make a case for than the concrete bound catchphrases that these people like to use, and capitalize, by the way, on visual media to tell their story. So, I mean, I think we're sort of in a losing position here. When your case is deeper, it's a lot harder to make.
I disagree. I think the response to bad speech is more speech.
But I agree with you. I'm just saying that the case is a lot harder to make for our side.
Well, I think everyone supports the idea of education, of getting the information out. But it is without a doubt a very complex situation and a lot of parties involved. And what the objection, I think, or something to consider as to whether or not this is an appropriate and an effective means to use, is the messaging that comes out of BDS and the cultural boycott is not about education, it's about intimidation. And it's like slander. It only takes a second to say something really terrible about someone, and it could take them years and a lifetime to attempt to refute it. So that, you know, is one of the questions. And what about, is this really a legitimate, what happens if it wasn't about this issue, if it was about some other issue? Is it really legitimate, Alan? Do you think that censoring artists, determining what films audiences can see, who they can, where an artist can perform, is that really even acceptable alternative?
The issue here is that some musicians, performers, and so on feel that they have the right to have a political voice. They don't, and that's the big issue. Well, okay, they have a voice, but they shouldn't
Impose.
They shouldn't, yes, impose on their fellow artists to support their cause. But your question really was more about...
Well, you know, how legitimate this tactic really is. If the means, the force imposed is separating audiences from choosing what an audience can and cannot see, of pressuring artists about the content of their films, about pressuring artists about which...
I was just thinking how strange it is that, you know, I mean, if you make a movie, it's going to get shown in Israel, it's going to get shown in Palestine. Should actors say that, oh, I'm not going to make this movie if it's going to be shown in Israel? You know, that's ridiculous.
The thing is, artists, we have the expression through our art. I can work on a song and put certain lyrics that some people would like or not, and this is my expression. But I'm putting it out there to whoever wants to hear it. So you want to get the message, get it through my art. But I'm not going to say, those people from this country, nah, you don't deserve to hear my art. Why would I say that? You know, if you can. You know.
I mean, music, acting, filmmaking, I mean, it's all entertainment, and everybody likes to be entertained, whether they're from one country or any other country.
I think the unfortunate thing is that, you know, the artists are being exposed to these kind of tactics of slander, and they never asked for that. I mean, they really want to express their music or their film or whatever their art is. And then, I mean, I know what it is to be suddenly, you know, you're accused of something. And this, I think that slide that you showed said it all. It's like, I was kind of shocked to see those kind of tactics being used. It's just low.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, you know, because I agreed to come to Israel, I'm considered anti-Palestinian, which is not the case.
You're not.
Yeah.
I think as Ken said, boycotting, private citizens boycotting is a legitimate expression of their opinion. It's the slanders that I think are associated and the libels and the lies that are associated with the boycott and the conflation.
But now that everybody has said it's slander, I don't think it's, I think an element of slander is that it's false. And I'm not suggesting that it's true. I'm suggesting that in order to make your case for slander, you must convince the world that the position that is being expressed is false. And just so we're clear, even the United States has condemned Israel on occasion for the settlements and its conduct in the territories. And so the UK, France, the EU, all of that, we all know that there's a lot of, you know, you don't have to scratch very far below the surface to find anti-Semitism anywhere. We know that. But in fairness, you know, there are a lot of people in this synagogue who scratch their head at the behavior of Bibi Netanyahu on occasion when Trump delivers a speech at the United Nations that is ridiculous, and Netanyahu wants to give him a standing ovation, and a lot of Americans have trouble with the behavior of Israel's government under certain circumstances. And all I'm saying is, I'm not saying he's right, he's wrong, they're right, they're wrong. I'm not saying any of that.
But let's turn it like this. So
let's have the discussion.
Let's have the discussion. If the BDS open a discussion, we can have a discussion. They're not opening a discussion. They're not saying,
So let's have our
guys,
discussion.
let's talk about, as an artist, do you want to go to Israel? Because Israel have all these negative things and Israel have all these positive things. What do you think? No. They just paint us as an apartheid, which we're not. They paint us as bad people, which not all of us are. So you want to have a conversation? Let them open a conversation with us that it's open. It's not open for conversation. It's shooting us down, right? Saying we just bad in general.
You know, it's very interesting, and I think people within Israel are very critical of government policies during every administration, and people in the United States are very critical of their government's policies. I have never heard any of the people who are very critical, Americans or international people who are critical of U.S. policies suggesting a boycott. Okay. I'd like to turn this and make this, open it up and about a personal experience. Guy, you also had a personal experience with BDS when you were touring with Alan in Europe, and a concert promoter reached out to Alan. Can you share that?
Yes, of course. The specific country is not in Europe. The specific country is in the Middle East. It's Lebanon. So there was a specific tour we were about to go on. That most of it was European countries, and there was one show in Lebanon. And from my knowledge, Alan and Lisa told me about it, and I said, I would love to go, but I don't know if I can. I have an American citizenship, but I have Israeli citizenship too. So Lisa, she's the tour manager, sent the information to the promoter. I called my older brother and talked to him. He said, you don't go. I said, what do you mean? I'm American. Because for me, I don't look at it like this. He said, it's too dangerous. You just don't go. Israelis can be kidnapped there. And I've been here for 25 years, so I guess I'm not as, you know, you understand what it means. But it came back from the promoter that, in a way, I'm not welcomed, or I have to fly 24 hours ahead and go through all those. And I felt uncomfortable for Anna and Lisa to lose this gig, and I suggested that maybe they're going to send a sub player just for this one show. And both of them just said, nah, it's too late, we just cancel it. I was like, why? They said, if they don't welcome you, or just not just me, anyone out of the band, we just don't go.
Thank
Which I think
Alan
it's a really,
Parsons.
you know.
And again, on
Sorry for their loss of money.
and on a
We'll get the charge back to you.
And on another personal note, Mark, in 2014, there was, in the last conflict with Israel and Hamas, there was tremendous social media comments going on, and you were quite amazing. You were on Twitter, and you supported
Twitter
Israel.
is trying to kill me.
I know, it could be very scary stuff. So I'm curious about, and you were so articulate too, and so well informed about all the things that you said. Tell us why you did that, and if there was any cost to you involved.
I did it because a petition started circulating around Hollywood that a number of respectable actors signed. I think Penelope Cruz was one of them, Javier Bardem, condemning Israel for its disproportionate reaction to the murder of 3 of its human beings. Social media sort of responded in kind, I think, in alliance with the stars, who probably couldn't locate Israel on a map, but stuck their finger in the air and went with the winds. And I wound up, of course, having long discussions with a variety of people, some of whom were from the area. And some of my tweets were taken into larger public mediums, and whether that has had effect on my my career or not, I don't know. You know, these things tend to work behind the scenes and very slowly. But I felt that Hollywood suffers from a sort of disease of principle, you know, and they're not so ready to put the principle ahead of anything else, like their careers. But I think principles are sort of indispensable to a good life, and irrespective of what the cost is to my career. So in answer, I don't know if it's going to have any effect, but I felt like I was weighing in on the side of right, which is a very complicated thing, as you said. It's lots of gray areas. And it's definitely, I think, requires a lot of discernment in our discussion, and that's what I was trying to provide in that moment.
Thank you. And Alan, what would you say to another artist who is under attack, like Nick Cave is at the moment? Do you have any thoughts that you would share?
I would just say, listen, this is a minority conspiracy that has no foundation, so please ignore it. I think I made this point in the video I sent. It is an appeal for a boycott, not a boycott. And as long as it remains an appeal that can be rejected, that's what it is.
I think that's an excellent point. David, do you think boycott campaigns are a form of censorship? And if so, do you think it's dangerous? And to whom?
Yeah, I think, well, you know, when you're mixing artistic expression with a political viewpoint, and then you're attempting to silence something, I mean, that is censorship. A lot of that is happening. You know, there's some people, you know, I can't think of specific instances, but the owners of some companies who expressed a political view, and then people boycotted their products. Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, Chick-fil-A, things like that.
There's
and
others.
I think any of
Not
those...
in North Carolina. Right around that time I was working in North Carolina, there were lines around the block, probably expressly in reaction to that boycott. Just so you know.
And isn't there a distinction between individuals making that decision? And
well, the thing is, people should be able to express their views, and then it's like kind of silly when they organize these boycotts for somebody expressing their opinion. It's the same thing at Berkeley when, Ben Shapiro goes to speak, or Milo Yiannopoulos, admittedly, Milo's a provocateur, but they organize boycotts like this. They're afraid to hear what another opinion is. So this is kind of a recent phenomenon. I mean, I think it was also, as you mentioned, the part of McCarthyism, that if you expressed an opinion, that was, you were blacklisted. So.
Can I weigh in on this for a second?
Please.
I don't think a boycott is censorship. I think a government coming in and prohibiting you from speaking out or purchasing a product or soliciting an artist is censorship. You as a private citizen are completely empowered in a free society to not participate in another's work or to not purchase their work. But like I said, I think it's the slanders and the lies associated with the boycott in an attempt to win over a part of the population who doesn't know or who are naive enough to be taken in by catchphrases. So for me, it's the lying and the conflating and the smear by association that is so evil with respect to this particular movement.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for Guy and Ken, and then we'll take questions from the audience if you'd like to ask. You obviously still have friends and family in Israel, and also I'd like to urge everybody to please hold your mics a little closer. I think we're getting little signs. And so, how do Israelis feel when a artist bows to pressure? I'm not talking about someone who boycotts because they have a political opinion on the situation, but bows to pressure from third parties and cancels a performance in Israel.
I would say that probably the biggest thing, it's almost like, the way to say it's frustrating, because a lot of the people around me, my family and people that I know are pretty open-minded, somehow left-wing, and they feel like they've been judged for something that they actually suffer from. It means they disagree with a lot of what's going on, and on top of it, somebody blamed them as the piece, as big part of it. We all know that it's a complicated situation. I wish we'll see it resolved in our lifetime. Who knows? But I think that the main thing is people in Israel don't want to feel like they're isolated because of it. They're good people. There's good people everywhere, you know what I mean? And being born and raised there, only after living here for so long, I understand how complex is the issue in Israel. One of the most complex is the issues that we're facing. And so I think it's hurtful. I think it hurts people because they've been judged for something they're not, and nobody asked them for their opinion. They might be really cool people that love Nick Cave or whoever, and now they cannot go and see it, on top of the fact that they read the news and it bothers them anyway. So to punish the people doesn't really make sense to me. You want to go after the government? Go after the government. So.
Ken, do you feel that this campaign has had a chilling effect on artists' desire to book a concert in Israel?
I'm sure it has had some chilling effect because, I think to Alan's point, most artists have no interest in being political. I have a client who coined a phrase once, the George Clooney rule, which is that, when George Clooney gets involved with a charity, he stands next to the executive director in a microphone, and he's clearly more knowledgeable than anybody else on whatever it is that he's supporting. It's very hard for a celebrity to compete with that, because it's very hard to be that knowledgeable and to be that committed and to be that involved. And so oftentimes, artists, celebrities who are asked by charities to show up, do so, and then are put in the uncomfortable position of not knowing what they're talking about when it comes to questions about the cause that they're involved with. And so getting sucked into a political debate is very unappealing to most artists, and therefore there are artists who would rather not have to be exposed for how ignorant they are about the subject that they are being asked. Well, it's true. I mean, I think it's absolutely true. It's not their job. It's not why they're there. They're there to do their job, and they want to be left alone. And so, yes, I think there is a chilling effect. I think to a large extent, however, the entertainment industry in particular has done a very good job of convincing artists that, to the point that's been made several times, appearing at a concert in Israel is not taking a political stand on the activities of the Israeli government. So to that extent, the boycott is largely ignored in that regard, but it is hard to ignore in the fact that it is loud and it is noisy. And we live in a world of rumor and innuendo and gossip, and I'm going to meet a client right after this who was accused of raping a woman 13 years ago. It is having a deleterious effect on his career right now. He's never been accused of anything ever other than this person who has surfaced now. That's a very difficult position to be put in when you are living your life in the public, when you are a celebrity or a director or someone who people will distance themselves from rather than have to figure out what the truth is. And so this is why I think the most important thing that we can do if we're going to combat this is insist that the truth be more of a public topic of conversation, and that we insist that the truth be, even if it's hard, that we insist that people figure out, what is the truth. Because if it's not true, then it's slander. And if it has a germ of truth, it may not so much be slander.
I just have one more question, then we'll turn it over to the audience. Mark, Alan Dershowitz, who is one of my personal heroes, has often said that he does not support Israel in spite of being liberal. He supports Israel because he is a liberal. Do you think that supporting Israel or taking a stand against the campaign is a liberal conservative question?
I mean, I define liberalism a little differently than most people. For me, liberalism is in the classical sense, and so that means embracing Enlightenment values. And for me, supporting Israel would be an expression more akin to supporting classical liberalism, freedom of the individual, and respect for what we imagine are the pillars of civilization, right? Free speech, freedom of association, tolerance. These are the values and virtues I think that basically that culture embraces, irrespective of individuals within it, because it's such an incredibly diverse culture. So yeah, it is liberal, and I think conservatives now are sort of classically liberal. I think they define many of them in that respect. So yeah, liberal ideal to me.
I'd like to now invite anyone in the audience. We have someone walking around with a microphone.
First of all, to give my surprised appreciation to the panel for what was truly a nuanced presentation. When I say surprised, it's because so very often we get one side, one perspective, and it's very hard and very clear, and you opened up to us the fact that it is very complicated. So thank you for that, and thank you for Israel Bonds and Wilshire. The impact of BDS on Israel is de minimis. It's really financially nothing at all. The problems that emerge out of Israel are severe and continuing. And without it being a question, it's a request and a hope that those of us who really love Israel, and that includes the panelists, and I'm grateful to be counted in your midst, need to find ways to open the conversations to help move the extremes in the angry shouting matches to come a little bit closer to understanding each other. We need your help not just to say I don't stand with them or I do stand with them, but we're going to have to learn how to build bridges of understanding and communication, or we're going to suffer a lot. So thank you, and please help us develop that conversation.
Excellent. I also wanted to mention and to remind everyone that this program is being live streamed and recorded for future use for Liberate Art and Israel Bonds and Wilshire Boulevard. So you are making a very public statement. Annie, pick someone.
Thank you. As a follow-up, Mr. Zucker's comment regarding the wall and Mr. Parsons, your UK connection, the graffiti artist Banksy recently, last plus or minus a year ago, built the Waldorf Astoria in Jerusalem, the hotel. That's not something that's subliminal. It's facing you when you go to Jerusalem, right on the wall. Do you have any follow-up on what impact the Banksy, the graffiti artist Banksy, has on that little hotel that's in Jerusalem?
Who is that question for?
The graffiti artist Banksy?
No. Does anyone, was that for Alan or David?
I wasn't aware of this hotel. I'm sorry.
Bethlehem. Well, Bethlehem, the hotel that's on the wall. That's
Well, certainly.
It's an artist making a political statement.
Yes. And that's certainly, legitimate. Artists should be allowed to make political statements, and Banksy certainly does. And I don't think he should be silenced. There's also, interestingly enough, ongoing right now, a movement growing to boycott Roger Waters, and and I understand the passion, but that's also a boycott. Alan, do you have any feeling about artists about boycotting Roger Waters?
What would that entail? I mean, he's not allowed. He's not allowed to.
It means
spread his art.
staying for
You're not welcome for dinner.
Actually, there was a children's choir that was set to, perform with Roger Waters, and there's boycott pressure on them, and because of charges that Roger is anti-Semitic, and they withdrew, and now there's.
So you're saying boycott the boycott? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, I just reiterate that musicians and artists should just do what they do their job. That's what we do. We try to entertain people, and that should cross all cultural barriers and political barriers.
Thank you.
Hello. Could you please discuss a little further what the security needs or ongoing threats are to artists who do perform in Israel, ignoring the boycott threats? And I'm not specifically talking of the highest echelon performers. They have their security staffs with them and afterwards.
Well, I don't include myself in the upper
so
echelon.
please.
I'm very pleased, but I will say that I'm very pleased that I'm going to Israel first and then to Holland. So, public demonstration or anything like that in the course of our business, but
I can speak to that.
you described some earlier, right? So.
In fact, most of the intimidation, almost all of the intimidation, occurs before the artist gets to Israel. And yes, you're correct that artists who can afford and require large security anywhere in the world also hire their own in Israel. Israel is actually, in that measure, a relatively safe place. And we've all seen, violence at concerts in Manchester and other places in the world. So most of the time when they bow or they get scared, it's beforehand, and it's because of the vitriol and the venom in which the conversation happens particularly on social media, but also in petitions and emails, and it creates fear in the artists, and they actually worry about their physical safety, but no one's ever been harmed when they were there, thankfully.
We're going there next weekend, so if it's going to happen, it's going to happen pretty soon. But, no, I'm not fearful of that, I have to say.
It seems like several years ago, the BDS movement was having greater success convincing artists not to come to Israel. However, in the last few years, it seems like the tide has turned. Was there a tipping point or an inciting incident that helped tip artists to feel more comfortable to go to Israel?
Well, I can tell you what happened was actually much more an illusion than fact. There was certainly a huge spike in 2010. The cultural boycott was officially launched in like 2005. There was a spike in 2010 that really surrounded the Turkish flotilla incident. And there were several things going on in Israel. There was a film festival, there was music festivals, and given the tension, legitimately, I mean, there was huge tension between Israel and Turkey, the artists were very concerned about their safety. And there was much hay made of it, and many artists were, reported as canceling who had actually never scheduled. And yes, and there was definitely has been a huge, huge turn, because when it first happened, the people who support the campaign had the advantage of surprise. Every artist who was targeted was shocked. It was brand new. They make very soft targets because they're human beings, they're people. And now what's happened is that this campaign has done themselves. They've shot themselves in the foot in some ways because they've normalized their activities. It's now become de rigueur. You go to Israel, you get targeted, afterwards, they move on to the next victim.
I should say, the music industry mobilized very quickly. David Renzer, who runs a publishing company, is very active and has maybe 100 executives from the business who are very well organized in terms of ensuring that artists are encouraged not to take the kind of vitriol that you've referred to seriously. The other thing is on the SodaStream thing, I don't know, Scarlett Johansson identifies as Jewish, and the people that targeted her didn't realize that. And so that campaign against her kind of backfired. Oops. Because she stepped up immediately and said, it's an endorsement deal, I like the product, what's going on, right? And she had no problem defending the campaign and her association.
And I'm very, very proud to have been the premier director of that organization and to have worked actually very closely with Scarlett's PR person on that. But yeah, and that's what it takes, and people have become really, with the support of people like the people on this panel, as more people speak out, as more people take a stand, it becomes easier, and artists are less easily intimidated.
I think an interesting point is that I mentioned earlier that it is in a minority. You two, Elvis Costello, I believe, Roger, of course.
U2's manager is Israeli.
U2 is what?
U2's manager is Israeli.
He's Israeli, guy.
Oh.
But Bono invests in Israel. Yeah.
So I think people look at these few artists and say, well, they're weird. Why won't they play in Israel? Just making that point. That
I'm a filmmaker.
It is a minority, and they are. I think the public at large look at them and say, well, what's their problem?
Okay, should we take two more questions?
Okay, I'm a filmmaker, and I've been hearing rumblings, because I work a lot in the Middle East, and India in particular, with the Harvey Weinstein thing. And the anti-Semitism, of course, I grew up in the South, so I know the anti-Semites only need an excuse. But I'm wondering if, and I'll open this to the panel generally, if you think this is going to do real damage to what I consider our cause, not only the cause of Israel, which I'm very proud of, but
as Jews in the entertainment industry. Do you see this being a permanent problem, or is it something you think will just pass?
David, would you like to try to answer that?
I have
And then I'd
nothing
like
to do
to
with
wrap
it.
up.
Well, you know, I can only, you know, from my personal experience, I just cringe whenever he mentions that he's Jewish. It's like, because he did. He says, and then he said something. Oh boy, I'm after the NRA, and that only helps the NRA when Harvey Weinstein attacks them. But you know, it just, you know, it's like when anybody's shot or anything, you naturally say, I hope he's not, the shooter isn't Jewish. That's just my personal thing. I've always been that way. So in this case, he's a monster, and of course, you know, I worked with him, not very much, but I mainly worked with Bob Weinstein. But a lot of people evidently knew about all this stuff, but that's neither here nor there. It's just I don't know how much. It just doesn't seem like people identify him with being Jewish. I'm sure, you know, he wasn't in shul every night.
Is the client you were talking about, is that somebody in sympathy with Weinstein?
No, I think it's interesting. I think, you know, like many people in the room, I cringe when someone's convicted of a financial crime and they turn out to be Jewish. I cringed, certainly, as we all did, when Bernie Madoff's crimes were revealed, or when Mike Milken's crimes were revealed, or when Ivan Boesky's crimes were revealed. And yet, you know, unfortunately, just like with anyone else, you know, we live in a country where not getting caught in a lie seems to be the same as telling the truth, and more so these days than ever. And you know, some of these people survive their crimes and remain wealthy, and we put their names on buildings and we honor them with events, or we attend their events. I mean, I would advocate a boycott of all sorts of things if I had the ability to do so, you know, and I do personally boycott all sorts of things, but, you know, it's...
Okay. I think it's now time to wrap up this, this panel, and I want to just end it by telling you there's two ways that you can make a difference. Number one, please visit my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Liberate Art. And there you'll be able to stay abreast of what's going on, and we'll provide you with the means in which to get personally active. The second thing is, and this is the most important of all, this has been an Israel Bonds event. Israel Bonds is crucial to giving Israel strength. Israel Bonds builds the infrastructure and technology centers that create 1 out of every 4 of the medicines, treatments, and technologies in use today. Israel Bonds provides a safe haven for Jews for all over the world. When you buy an Israel bond, you are making a declaration of support for Israel's path, purpose, and accomplishments. And you are rejecting BDS claims, proposals, and objectives. So Israel is under attack from all directions. We can all help make Israel strong by purchasing an Israel bond today. And let me tell you how it's done. When you arrived, each of you have a program on your chairs, and in there is an Israel Bonds card. If you write your name, your email address, and your phone number, they will contact you. It's a great way to help out. Please, before you go to the very lush reception, please go over to the Israel Bonds table and give them your card. And it also makes a great Hanukkah gift. So thank you all for coming today.